Hi! So, let's talk about romance and fantasy. It seemed like the appropriate weekend to release this video. The season of love. I can't say it without sounding cheesy. Unsurprisingly, there are a lot of different opinions on how romance should be handled in the fantasy genre. This is not surprising because there are a lot of different types of people who really love fantasy, but not all those types of people like romance. And I'm not even talking about liking or disliking romance in general. I'm talking about whether they want to read a story about romance. So there's something I started to notice in one of the Facebook groups I'm part of for fans of fantasy books, and it's what kind of recommendations people ask for. Sometimes somebody will ask for a fantasy book recommendation for something with a strong romance subplot, or even as the main plot. And other people don't want anything to do with romance. If they're asking for a book recommendation, they may say that if romance is a main theme of the book, they'd rather read something else. Now, this might get a little sticky because nobody likes a stereotype, and I'm not trying to stereotype anybody here. But what I have observed, and what you can probably guess, is the gender identity of the people who want strong romance themes in their fantasy versus the ones who don't. I probably don't even have to say who these groups are. But books are written for a target audience. And depending on who that target audience is, the romance may be a extra subplot not really mattering to the story. It might be the main thing going on, or completely or nearly absent. So I think I actually tend to read fantasy books that are not targeted towards me specifically. I actually tend to read books targeted more towards a male audience, which means I don't really see strong romantic themes in the books that I read all the time. And sometimes, because I'm reading those books that are targeted at a different audience than me, I get a little annoyed at the female representation in them. But on the other hand, sometimes I get even more annoyed at what I'm supposed to like or what's included in the books that are targeted at a female audience. And one of those things that actually kind of annoys me is having romance as the main theme and the main point, and the whole character arc and the whole journey of the characters leads up to this big romantic moment, and then that's the end. When the book is just about the romantic plot, it falls a little flat. And I'll get to why that is in just a minute, but there is another type of fantasy book for another target audience that is even worse, as far as romance is concerned anyway. So the type of fantasy books I've been talking about so far are adult fantasy, and a huge group of books that tends to get kind of a bad rap is the YA, not even genre. YA isn't a genre, YA is an age group, and YA, young adult, is very much more centered around the romance. Like real young adults or teenagers, it's often awkward. They don't know how to interact. It's all about the drama, love triangles. I don't know who I like. I don't know what I want out of life. Ugh. But if you find yourself getting really annoyed with the romance and the fantasy you're reading, it might be because you're reading YA instead of adult. Or it might be for the same reason that I tend to find it a little annoying. And here is one of my main opinions on romance and fantasy, and that is, I don't think romance should be the main plot or the main theme in a fantasy book. I do like romance. I love when there's two characters who fall in love and get together and they live happily ever after. That's not a bad thing, but I think it should be a subplot, not the main plot. Because romance is not the main plot of anyone's life in real life. I don't know about your life, but for me, my romance with my husband is not the main part of my life. It's not the only thing I have going on in my life. And my relationship with my husband isn't even all about the romantic part. Our relationship is also based on friendship, mutual interests, commitment. We swore an oath to be together for the rest of our lives. And then the romantic part of our relationship is like a subplot to the relationship. It's part of it. It adds flavor. It makes it better, but that's not what it's all about. And if I focused on just the romantic part of my relationship with my husband, it would get boring. it would eventually fall flat, and I would start thinking, okay, what's next? Or I might start looking for romance in another place. And I think that is part of the problem with books, and especially fantasy books, because we enter a fantasy world for so many other reasons, is that when you get to the end and they're finally together and the romance has come to its big conclusion and then it's over, okay, now what? Now I need to go looking for romance in another place, and I need to read the next romance novel, and romance novels just flood bookstores. They flood Amazon. They flood what is targeted at people who like to read about romance because it's never enough. The romantic plot of a story is just not strong enough to carry the entire book. And just like the romantic part of my relationship with my husband is a part of my life, it should only be a part of a story. I like it included in my stories. The book I'm reading right now, Malice by John Gwynne, has little to zero romance. That's fine. This book doesn't really need it. But the books that do have it, like Words of Radiance is an example, that's part of the story, but it's not what the story is about. It just adds another dimension. But the story doesn't rely on two people getting together at the end. If that's what it relied on, it would be that much weaker. Okay, if you're a fan of romance novels watching this video, please don't think that I'm just writing on romance. Like I said, I do like romance, but if I'm going to spend my time on a book, I want there to be something more than just that. If you're watching this and you're somebody who does not like to read about romance in your books and you'd rather read something else, might I suggest that a little romance can add some happiness and depth to a story that might not otherwise have it. Or you might be like me and like the addition as long as there's not too much of it all the time. Let me know your thoughts. Did this seem like an unpopular opinion? Do you tend to agree? And do you tend to gravitate towards books that are heavy on the romance or light on the romance? Let me know. Let's talk about it. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter now. I started a Twitter. Don't judge me. We can also chat there. Subscribe to this channel for more fantasy book-related subjects, and I will see you next time. Bye!